Respectful of everybody's time. It's 11:01 at this time. I'll call this emergency meeting of the Waco ISD Board of Trustees to order. A quorum is present. Welcome everyone who has dialed in to listen to the meeting. The video conference has been made possible by the governor's March 16th order that was as a result of a request from the Texas Attorney General to temporarily suspend certain open meetings law so that we could have these types of meetings due to the COVID-19 pandemic. In accordance with those suspended rules, I'm going to read a number of items in order to certify that we are complying with the Open Meetings Act. First, members of the public are able to listen to this meeting by telephone by dialing in at 979-990-5000 and entering access code 158817. Notice of this emergency meeting was posted online and provided to local news media for at least an hour before the meeting. Actually, notice of this meeting was posted yesterday afternoon at 5 p.m. in order to allow for public comment. Instructions on how to comment on the posted agenda were included in our meeting notice, and comments were accepted up until 10 o'clock last night. Although the board is not gathered in one central physical location, we do have a quorum in attendance. We're meeting by the Zoom video conferencing application and the free conferencecall.com conference call service, which both allow for two-way communication. The conference call service allows for up to 1,000 people to dial in at a time. And we apologize in advance for any unforeseen difficulties. We ask for your patience as we navigate through unprecedented conditions. Carrie, I have 2 boxes for you, by the way.
Boxes?
Now I see. Great. Okay. Next, all of our meeting procedures will adhere to board adopted procedures to the extent practicable. All items to be discussed or voted upon have been posted in accordance with state law. A video recording of this meeting is being made and will be posted on the district's website at a later date. Finally, if you have any questions about the suspended laws or our conduct of this video conference meeting, you may contact the Office of the Attorney General by calling 888-672-6787 or by emailing toma@oag.texas.gov. At this time, we're at number 3 on our agenda, public comments on agenda items. As I mentioned, comments to our agenda could have been submitted until 10 o'clock last night. Those comments have been sent to Josh Wucher in our communications department. So at this time, I'll ask Mr. Wucher to read the comments that were received from the members of the public.
Yes, thank you, Madam President. We have 4 email submissions from the public. Each address the agenda item regarding the possible postponement of the May 2nd, 2020 trustees election. Carmen Sands and Jaja Chen submitted the following public comment in regards to an online petition they've created. The following excerpt from the petition has been signed by 130 individuals throughout Waco, Texas as of Monday, March 30th, 2020 at 7 p.m. We have submitted the petition in its entire letter with signatures, locations of signers, and comments to the Board of Trustees. They write, "Dear local leaders, We are very concerned to hear that the City of Waco and Waco ISD school boards have not yet decided to postpone the May 2nd elections, despite Governor Abbott's calls and other neighboring communities' recent decisions to do so. We are writing today to urge you to do so. The City of Waco is under a shelter-in-place order, which is currently in effect until April 7, 2020. Even with the shelter-in-place order, new positive COVID-19 cases continue to be reported and identified, some of which are serious enough to require hospitalization. Dr. Gray, the director of the Waco-McLennan County Public Health District, has pointed out in the recent March 24th City Council special meeting that the rate of transmission for McLennan County is significantly higher than similar cities of its size, and particularly so when comparing the rate of transmission with major metropolitan areas in Texas. The scientific evidence shows that extraordinary measures are required to slow the spread of COVID-19. Only by heeding these extraordinary measures for a proper period of time will we be able to mitigate the health systems in McLennan County from becoming overwhelmed and unable to meet the needs of our community. Wacoans are making extraordinary sacrifices to heed the shelter-in-place order. Please do not negate the sacrifices of individuals in the business community by holding an election, which will begin with early elections in 3 weeks on April 20th, 2020, at the probable height of the spread in Waco. We are concerned that the continuation of the elections in person has the potential to expose hundreds during the 2-week voting period from April 20th to May 2nd. We really want to believe that you have the best interests of our residents and our city at heart. It is for this reason that we are asking you to postpone the May 2nd, 2020 election to November 3rd, 2020. Thank you. Mito Diaz Espinoza provided a copy of an online petition on behalf of the Hispanic Leaders Network, affirming the following. By signing this petition, I am appealing to the Waco City Council and the Waco ISD Board of Trustees to officially change the election date from May 2nd to November 3rd, 2020. A third submission from Peter Manjiguera says his comments are as a private citizen and that he does not speak for any public or private entity. He says the following. I would like to encourage the Board of Trustees to postpone the May 2nd, 2020 trustee elections to November. I believe it would be ill-advised and irresponsible to host an election when people are being asked to not leave their homes. The County Elections Office has already made it clear that they will not provide any resources other than elections equipment because they already know that logistically it is going to be incredibly difficult to administer this election. We will not have the requisite cleaning supplies, election workers, public spaces, and administrative support needed to run this election effectively. This doesn't even mention the fact that we would be asking people to leave their homes and stand in line to vote when there seems to be no immediate end in sight when it comes to COVID-19. I believe that holding the election in November would give our county and localities the time needed to ensure the safety of all voters and give voters the confidence that they can vote without risking their immediate safety. I hope that the Board of Trustees comes to the conclusion that we should in fact wait till November to hold our elections. Thank you. And Jessica Juarez submitted the following public comment. As an 11-year Waco ISD parent and taxpayer, I ask the board apply to postpone the election to July 14th in the interest of public health. I don't know that I would feel safe attending a physical voting center so soon. I realize mail-in ballots exist, but there is no more satisfying way to vote than in person. Beyond that, I ask the election be postponed in the interest of voter empowerment. For the first time in a very long time, all positions up for election are contested. Up until the social distancing requirements, I had only heard Mr. Guillory and Mrs. Mustaqim speak publicly. I haven't seen Ms. Houston or Mr. Dupuy in public forum. How can one decide whom to vote for by April 20th, the first day of early voting? Additionally, 4 candidates have spoken against keeping the election on May 2nd, 2 of which are incumbents. Finally, earlier Monday, President Trump extended social distancing requirements until April 30th. Again, I ask that the board apply to postpone the election to July 14th, or if needed, until November 3rd. Thank you for your cooperation. And that concludes the public comments section.
Okay, thank you. Next on our agenda is, and I guess I could just remind anyone that's listening, as usual, the board's not allowed to comment on public comments In this case, we do have an agenda item that's not next, but number 5, at which time we are going to be discussing the issue which all of these public comments address. However, next on our agenda is to review, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding the cutoff date for GPA for the 2019-2020 school year. Dr. Kincannon.
Yes, thank you. I have a recommendation today regarding EIC local and grade class rank. There's a bit of noise there. I'm recommending that grade point averages and class rank be determined, as you can see on your agenda memo there, based on work, projects, and assignments completed on or before March the 6th, 2020, and quizzes, exams, and tests taken on or before March the 6th, even if those items are not graded until some date after March the 6th. That was our last date of regular instruction provided prior to our closure before spring break. At the end of March 6th was the last date before spring break, and prior to the COVID-19 closure for the pandemic. This date was also the last date of instruction for the 4th 6 weeks, which we've selected based on guidance from Commissioner Mike Morath, who has worked with school districts all across the state, and in regard to software systems and kind of syncing up, he's asked or advised that the last day of instruction before closure should be the last date of the 4th 6 weeks. Then the 5th 6 weeks then would be the time in which we're closed, and if we come back, then the 6th 6 weeks would be begin on the date that we return. So March 6th is a natural break in regular instruction, and we believe that that provides a fair and consistent cutoff date for our students, and that would apply for our local honors, our Val and Sal, and our top honors for our class, and any kind of honors that are provided at our in our schools. So that's my recommendation to you all today regarding class rank and GPA.
Does anybody have any questions about that?
Dr. Kincannon, can y'all hear me?
We can.
Okay. I guess I've assumed y'all reviewed what impact that will have on class rankings and feel like it's going to treat everybody involved fairly.
We do. We've been studying that, and we believe that that's fair to all of our students, especially those students who are at the top, and it doesn't cause a major shift and create issues for our students and families that we're aware of at this time. So we feel that that natural break of March the 6th is fair and will provide some consistency for all.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Dr. Kincannon, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
So based on the waivers from the state and looking at the number or minimum number of school days required during school year, this in no way would invalidate those rankings, right? The fact that we have waivers, so the minimum number of days are not going to be achieved, but because of the waiver, it won't invalidate what they're doing right now.
Yeah, that's correct. It's the board's decision on when to put the cutoff, select the cutoff, and I know a number of districts have already made similar decisions to suspend their EIC local. And so this is pretty much patterning what we're seeing across the state. at this time, but the number of days of instruction will not impact our students at this point.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Josh, before we continue, I'm getting texts. First of all, that the audio cut off. I don't know if you got that after you read the first petition from Sains.
Yes.
So I'm going to ask you before we discuss number 5 to review who we got public comment. But then also, Dr. Kincannon, I've gotten comments that they can't hear you very well. So I don't know if there's any way you can speak into your mic any better.
Okay, I'll speak up. My
That's better already. Just probably speaking up. Yeah,
I'll get a little bit closer and speak up. I apologize for that.
that's good. Okay, does anybody else have any questions about the policy about GPA? Dr. Kincannon, did you, I don't know that this is finalized, but my understanding is that the commissioner is going to dictate how districts calculate their 6 weeks or 9 week grading periods, so that the amount of time that we're in closure, depending on what that is going to be, that's going to be designated a particular grading period.
No, the guidance that we received from the commissioner was that because of software systems and related issues to that the recommendation was that the 4th 6 weeks be cut off on the last day of regular instruction. And then he recommended that when we or that the period that we're closed be the 5th 6 weeks of school. And then should we come back, then the date that we come back, the first date we come back would be the first day of the last 6 weeks of school. And so I don't fully understand all of the technical issues in the PEAM software, but it would be related to our PEAM submission to the state. And so that was the guidance we received. And that seems to make sense to me.
Okay. Anybody else have a question? If not, I'll entertain a motion. Unmute your mic here.
Madam President, I move that we accept the administration recommendation for the grading period, please.
Thank you, Mr. Manning. A second?
You can hear me.
Okay, Mr. Dupuy, a second. Any more discussion? All right, all those in favor of the motion as presented, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, hearing none, that passes unanimously. Next is review, discuss, and take appropriate action regarding the possible postponement of the May 2nd, 2020 trustee elections for District 3, Place 3, at large Place 7, and the unexpired term at large Place 6. In addition to the public comment Mr. Wucher read at the top, there were 3 additional comments by Mr. Espinoza, Mr. Monteguera, and Ms. Juarez, all in favor of postponing the election. Because all the comments were similar, I don't see that we need to take the time to repeat them unless anybody would like to do so. And at this time, we're open for discussion. I will say at the top that we have been working nonstop since we were informed last Monday, May 23rd, by Kathy Van Wolf that the county no longer intended to run the elections for any of the local governmental entities, which included us, Midway ISD, and cities around us. Since we got word, we've been working with the city and with Midway ISD and other local municipalities to see if we could meet the concerns raised, if we could, working together, run the election ourselves, if we could possibly postpone the election to a date this summer. And I think now we have reached a point today where none of that's feasible. I'd received a lot of comments from people about moving the election to July along with the runoff. And I agree that sounds like our best option. But the governor, that's not an option for us. The governor hadn't given us that choice. The only option we've been given is to move the election to the presidential election in November. So I know that the city has already voted this morning to postpone the city's election to November, with the caveat that were the governor to consider our request to allow us to hold the election in July, that we have the opportunity to do that. I just really, I want to thank you, Kyle, and Josh and your team for working with the city and our partners and friends over in Midway to come up with a solution. But here we are today, and at this point, I'm in favor of postponing the election to November if we are not given the option to have it in July. That's my 2 cents. Welcome for anybody else to chime in.
Madam President,
Yes, sir.
I know you got some correspondence from Dr. Henry, and I've been getting word from a lot of other people. And now that we at the April the 30th deadline for the shelter in place, we have no options. And I would love for July also, but like I said, we kind of got our hands tied, so we're gonna have to just ride with the November 3rd, and what happened, what happens. That's my comment.
Yes, sir, Ms. Cordaway.
I just wanted to thank the administration for really, I guess, bringing the concerns of public health forward also. I think this pandemic offers a unique time in our history. And I think, everyone is wanting to do what's in the best interest of public health and not just thinking about ourselves, but thinking as a collective whole. And, I am also in favor of the November postponement. I think looking at the trends and the projections, looking what's happening in China and what has happened there, my hope and my prayer is that this really does subside by November. I think it is, again, kind of unprecedented times. But I wanted to, I guess, assure people that we live in this community. These are our friends, these are our family, and we obviously are looking out not only for our friends and our family, but I guess the greater good of the whole, and really want to do what's in the best interest of this community, of our students, of the families. And so I just wanted to assure the public of that we live here, and these are our friends and our family, that some of them are on the front lines and some of them are I guess that's my comment, that we take seriously this time and this issue and this pandemic that we're in. And so I am in favor also.
Thank you. And you've reminded me that where we started earlier in the week was discussing with Ms. Van Wolf her concerns about making our polling sites safe. So that was really our first conversation, is what can we do to help you make sure we can have safe polling sites? And we were offering to help her recruit workers. We were offering to think through different ways that we could just make sure that the health and safety of the sites was priority one. So thank you, because that's really where we started, is what can we do to help you make sure this election is safe for everybody. Anybody else?
Yes, as one of the people who's actually running, I think this is absolutely the right decision, given everybody's concerns about health. I don't talk about this very often, and so doing this in a public forum is kind of weird, but I live with somebody who's high risk for any kind of upper and lower respiratory system, because he has a congenital heart defect, and so he operates at around 85 to 90% pulse oxygen. So he's a student, it's my son, and I've been thinking about him, of course, a lot, and also about every other child and teacher and community member who, you know, has to make a decision that's going to be the safest for their family. On the other hand, I'm an appointed official, and I'm eager for us to have an election so that the voters can speak about who they want to be on our board of trustees. But I'm also in favor of postponing this until November. And obviously, if we can get this done in July instead, I think that's a great idea too.
Madam President?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, certainly safety, paramount importance in this time. We're all faced with not only some family ordeals, health related and financially related. So clearly we've got to be sensitive to the broader community and the well-being and the welfare of those that will be participating in this election. I was hopeful that July 14th would be a compromise date, if you will. I'm perhaps seeking some clarification. Is that door closed, or is there still a request for consideration out there somewhere that I'm not aware of?
Mr. DeBeer, you might be able to speak to that, but I know that the city's vote this morning approved postponing, with the stipulation that if the governor grants the option to have the election at an earlier date, that we have the option to consider that. So I don't know, Kyle, if I know we signed on to a letter asking the governor to give us that option, but I don't know what the status of that is.
That letter is being finalized and will be forwarded to the governor's office later this week. In general, there is not a lot of optimism that the governor will ultimately give political subdivisions that are scheduled to hold elections on May 2nd the option of moving those elections to July. However, the resolution that the board is being asked to consider to formalize the action of postponing the election would preserve that option if it becomes available.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, so unless there's any further discussion, I don't know if, would y'all like to do an individual roll call vote?
Angela?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to add, I'm a little bit uncomfortable, for my part at least, voting to cement myself in office for an additional 6 months without an election. For that reason and a couple others, you know, there's a school board convention in October that would be, you know, for any changes that are going to happen on the school board, it'd be nice for these people to already be in place if, you know, some of us are going to rotate off. Two, we vote on the budget in August. There's a lot of things that should happen after we've had the election. There's a reason for the calendar as it sits, and it's not just arbitrary. And I don't want people to think that we were pushing getting this done. I'll add, as far as fear of contracting the virus at the election place, some of the loneliest moments of my life have been spent voting in school board elections. There's generally about 3,000 people across the city that actually show up to vote during that time. Now, that's not to ridicule or make light of anybody's fears. I get it. I understand. But at any rate, I agree. Even with the absentee or the mail-in ballots available, we can't do this May 2nd. That's not going to work. I would, but if we have any opportunity to get it done before November, before August, man, that would be fantastic. So that's all I'll say. That said, I'm for not doing it May 2nd. And I'll mute my mic. Thank you all.
All right, thank you for those comments. Do y'all want a roll call vote, or are you comfortable? Actually, I'll entertain a motion, and then we'll talk about that.
I move that we accept.
Go for it, Carrie.
I wasn't sure what I was going to say. I move that we accept the administration's recommendation and delay the May 2nd scheduled elections until the first available date.
Second.
Are you all
Thank you, Stephanie.
Just for clarification, is that for adopting the resolution that has been presented by the administration in our packet?
Yes, I probably didn't word that quite right, and I apologize.
That's
I don't
all
have it
right.
in front of me. It's on my other computer.
Okay, unless I hear an objection, I'll, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
I'm in a meeting. Aye. I was muted. Aye.
Any opposed?
My eye got out.
Okay, the motion passes unanimously. Finally, Dr. Kincannon, since we're all together, we thought this would be a good opportunity for you to give us an update of where we are today in response to what's going on. Unmute your mic first. There
Can you hear me? You can. Okay, great. I wanted to take an opportunity to give you some updates regarding our response to COVID-19, things that have happened since our press conference on March 13th, announcing school closures, and that was just a little over 2 weeks ago. We initially planned to be closed for 2 weeks. That, of course, was extended to April the 3rd, when Governor Abbott announced that all schools would be closed on March the 19th. Of course, you know that in the city of Waco, our mayor ordered a shelter in place, and we notified parents that we would be closed through April 7th. Today's news is that has been extended to the 21st by the mayor. Yesterday, superintendents from the greater Waco area met virtually to discuss extending school closures. Of course, we all intend to do so. And of course, with the mayor's announcement this morning, it will be a minimum of April 21st for Waco ISD. However, I was planning to hold off on making that decision until this afternoon or early evening. Commissioner Mike Morath and Governor Abbott are scheduled to speak at 2 p.m. today. And we've been told that there may be some announcement regarding school closures. So at a minimum, we're looking at April 21st. Should we get a different date that's further out from the governor and the commissioner this afternoon, then we'll certainly use that date. I want to remind parents, staff, and community members that all of our communications can be found on the district's website. That's www.wacoisd.org/COVID-19. A little bit about meal service. I want to commend Cliff Reese and our child nutrition team who have worked so diligently to provide meals to our families. After we announced school closures on Friday, March the 13th, Mr. Reese and his team, with the help of Baylor's Texas Hunger Initiative, were able to stand up a dozen feeding sites across the community, literally over a weekend. As time has gone by, those locations have been adjusted to meet the needs of the community, along with the addition of some mobile feeding sites. And we're currently providing meals at 14 locations across the community. And again, information can be found at www.wacoisd.org/COVID-19. So if you're looking for the latest information, it is there. Regarding instruction for the first week of school closure, March 16th through the 20th, our curriculum and instruction team developed a 2-week at-home learning kit for each of our students. 15,000 kits were developed, and more than 90% were picked up by our families on March the 23rd. And since that time, most of the remaining kits had been distributed by the end of last week. And those are expected to carry our students through the end of this week. And so while our families are working through those at-home learning kits this week, our CNI team is currently preparing for the next phase of instruction, which is expected to launch next week. They're developing grade level plans that will use digital resources that the district already has available. It's important that every student has equitable access to instruction from home. And as we begin to use online resources, that means every family needs access to a device that will work with the resources and the internet. A previous survey conducted by the district that showed that nearly 90% of our families have internet access, but the survey did not collect information about how families access the internet. So therefore, last Friday, we launched a survey to gather some additional information about the needs of our families as we prepare for the next phase of instructional supports. Many families are responding to the survey online, but our campuses will be following up with other families to discuss the technology in their household. For 2 weeks now, our technology department has been preparing devices to be checked out to families who need them, and they've worked with vendors to provide a limited number of internet hotspot devices to also be checked out for families who need them. Initially, we expect to have 5,000 laptops and 500 hotspots available for families that need a device and/or internet access. We're still finalizing plans for instruction and for the deployment of devices, working on that this week, and we'll communicate more details to our families later in the week. Our business operations have continued during this time, and I would like to thank our CFO, Cheryl Davis, and her team for their work, for their work to assist in processing purchase orders, making sure that payroll is not interrupted, and generally keeping the business of the district running. I also want to report that our human resources department is continuing their work, and we are preparing for a virtual job fair. Our communications team has been outstanding during this time, and I want to express appreciation to them as well. They've worked hard to make sure that we're sharing accurate and timely information to our families. Our principals have also done an outstanding job of keeping in touch with their staff and their families, and I want them to know how much we appreciate them. As you know, yesterday I had to deliver some tough news regarding the hospitalization of G.W. Carver Principal Philip Perry. And I would ask that you keep Mr. Perry and his family in your thoughts and prayers. A lot of people pulling for him, and it's our hope that he will get better soon. As you can see, a lot of events have transpired in a very short period of time, and I just want to thank you all for your support. None of us have been through anything like this before, and I think the way that everyone is pulled together as a community during this challenging time is pretty remarkable. I'd be happy to answer any questions about our response, as well as hear any feedback that you've received from families and employees. And so I'll pass it back to you.
Madam President.
Yes, sir.
I just got a text message, and I don't know if it's proper at this time, but it's only us on this
No,
think I need
Mr.
to get.
Manning, Mr. Manning, it's not. It's open. It's a public
Okay.
line, and so
I'm going to send this to Dr. Ken Callan. I do that privately because I don't want the wrong word. But the one question I do have is that I know what are we doing with our special ed students, our dyslexic students? I know that they need special care and everything like that. Are we doing anything to support them?
Yes, sir. Thank you for that question. We each special education ESL student received additional packets that were customized for them. And as we move forward into the next phase, we have resources that provides the opportunity to individualize instruction for our special needs students. That's a hot topic across the state. And we are certainly doing our best to honor IEPs during this time. And our special ed department has done an exceptional job of responding. So thank you for that question.
Mrs. President, I also have a question.
yes, sir.
Dr. Kincannon, I know that we were looking at getting devices for the kids to be able to utilize at their house. Wondering, are we installing the same kind of firewall protective screens, for lack of better words, on those devices to make sure that they stay on the right sites?
Yes, I don't have specific details on that, but that's the purpose of the imaging, and we certainly are. Now, I have experience with the one-to-one school district, so I know the challenges of that. So we'll take every precaution we can. But students are pretty industrious, and so we'll need our parents to help monitor what their children do on the internet and make sure that they aren't getting into sites that they're not supposed to be. And so that can be very challenging to lock down devices, and it can also create restrictions that we don't want to have. So the answer is yes, with a caveat that we need parents' help as well. Great question. Thank you. Anyone else?
Okay, well, thank you, Dr. Kincannon. Before we close, well, and I know that, actually, are there some announcements before I have just some closing comments?
Only one brief announcement, Madam President, and that's that
Okay.
the College Board has released information about how they will be adjusting AP exams and AP courses through the end of the year. All of those details for our high school students that is relevant for are on our COVID-19 website, which you can find at wacoisd.org/COVID-19. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, before we all hang up and go back to work, I just want to thank all of you for your support and your flexibility and just being accessible both to me. I know as we've been dealing with the election and getting information out to everybody in a timely way. I just really appreciate you. We have a great team and very proud of the work you've done, Dr. Kincannon, your administration. Mr. Perry is very heavy on my heart, as I'm sure on everybody else's. And so I really wish our families well and encourage everybody to stay safe and follow the instructions that we're receiving from our federal, state, and city. With that,
Madam President?
yes,
Madam President?
yes, sir, Mr. Sykes.
Just in extension of that, I know we would all appreciate ongoing updates on the COVID situation, certainly Mr. Perry as well. So obviously we're very, very concerned. It affects everybody, family, friends, et cetera, community members. So appreciate ongoing updates regarding COVID and the district status, if you will, including any individuals and families that may be impacted by this. That's very important information at this time, I think. So
Thank you. We sure will.
Agreed. Okay, with that, probably won't be our last video conference meeting. Good to see everybody. We're adjourned.
Thank you.